welcome to Easy Eats. My name is Chef Yves Dechaine, and today we're in the Greener Villages Learning Kitchen with our garden program coordinator, Erin Danforth. Welcome, Erin.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Oh, no worries. And thank you for being on. I know that this time of year, it's all about putting the gardens to bed and all that fun stuff. So before we get to that, and before we get to making our green tomato pie today is what we're going to present, let's talk a little bit about you.
Sure.
How did you come to be our garden program coordinator?
It's kind of a funny story. It started out with wanting to volunteer here for a long time. I was really interested in what this place does, and thought I knew a lot about what they did. And so finally in the new year, I made the commitment to start volunteering with plans to move to the gardening program once it opened up for the spring. And then in the meantime, got to know people and just was really enjoying it here. It was such a fulfilling experience. Heartbreaking to see how many people rely on it, but also so fulfilling that you just even make the smallest difference to help address it, right?
Absolutely. It's one of those things where how can we contribute?
That's right.
Contributing in the way we can, right?
The culmination of a bunch of small efforts, right? So I fell in love with the place and then found out that their growing program coordinator was retiring, and just kind of had a joking conversation with the manager of services, and he said, "Oh, you should apply." And I was like, "No, I've got a job, I'm good." But I just couldn't shake the desire to be involved and take my gardening experience and try to see if I could help feed some people. And so I said yes, and the rest is history. We're wrapping up the season. It's been exciting, wonderful, but yeah, it's been a ride for sure.
So how do you go about saving a seed?
So it depends on the vegetable. There are certain ones that you just really shouldn't save, things like squash and anything that can be cross-pollinated.
Okay.
But I started saving peppers and tomatoes. And for anybody that's interested in saving pepper seeds, it is just about the easiest thing on planet Earth. You open the pepper, you scrape the seeds out onto a plate, let them dry, and boom, you're done. And
really?
That's it. Tomatoes is a little more tricky. I use what we call a fermentation method. So we cut a tomato open, squeeze it out, fill the glass with water, and then let it sit and actually ferment. Like it's ready when it starts to get a little gross looking on top. Rinse that stuff out, rinse the seeds off, and then let them dry as well, and you're good to go. And so anyone looking into it, I would highly encourage to check it out, because it really is not as difficult as people make it out to be. So, and then you have seeds for however long that they're viable for. Tomatoes is a very long time. So.
And I mean, there's some gardeners that save these seeds for years and years.
Yes.
I mean, there's the heirloom vegetables. And I know that a few chefs that I know are starting to look into that and develop that, having tomatoes or beans 100%. That have been grown for years here in New Brunswick. Are there are we trying to do that here in the garden? Are we trying to save native plants or native species here, or is that a plan that we have going on in the garden?
Yes, sir. That's one of the goals that we had this year, is to basically start our own seed bank or our own seed catalog, with the goal of within a few years having enough that we can distribute those seeds out to the clients as well, for anybody that's interested in growing at their own property, that we'll have a set of good heirloom seeds, to your point.
Absolutely.
Quality stuff that we know hasn't been manipulated, and yeah, so that's the goal. So we got a good start this year. I think I saved about 20 different varieties between tomatoes and peppers. That's what I stuck to, those two for this year, but we're going to kind of expand that as we go.
So you're basically growing and getting these seeds for what the clients most want, and we see that are not being left behind on the cart and things like that, right?
That's right. So that was one of the things that we really had to look at when we made the plan at the beginning of the season, which I only started in March, so it was a bit of a frantic, push to get things started.
Absolutely.
But it was a lot of conversations with the people who've been here a long time and who know how this place operates and what the clients like. So we really stuck to things that we thought people would want, not maybe some things that I would grow in my backyard garden, but people here may not necessarily know what to do with it. So part of that is going to be growing the stuff that we know is trusted, the cucumbers, the onions, the garlic, the lettuce. That was a huge one this year. This food bank community loves the leafy greens like beet greens, Swiss chard, which I was delighted to hear because they're a wonderful thing to grow and they're fairly easy as well.
So by saving seeds, we're definitely ensuring that they're not genetically modified. We're getting true fruit. That's what we're talking about, heirloom almost, like a natural kind of thing, right?
That's exactly. It's in my selection process for the seeds. Everything that I buy for my home garden is all non-GMO, all heirloom, to as much as you possibly can. There's some exceptions where you just can't. And when I came here, it was balancing, you know, the quality of the seeds, but also with the varieties that were going to be the most prolific, that would produce the most amount of food, because that's what it's really about.
You need to get the bang for your buck in order to help as much people as possible.
That's right. So we try to be as organic as possible. We're not entirely organic. It's extremely difficult to be entirely organic, especially when you're growing produce for scale, right? So we do everything we can. We do natural fertilizers. We use compost from a supplier near the Sussex area, and it's just wonderful quality stuff. But we don't spray chemicals. We don't do any of that, and we try to find seeds and plants that we know have come from the purest source possible.
Absolutely, that's great. So saving seeds not only to get like a true or a true variety of the plant or as natural as possible. It's also cost effective, isn't it?
It's extremely cost effective. So if you were to go, like for example, in my home garden, I usually do about 60 tomato plants every year. So to go and buy 60 individual tomato plants from the nursery, it adds up, right? The whole goal is that we're trying to save money and do things ourselves. So to me, it just made sense to at least try to start saving for that cost savings alone. Buying the plants versus even buying the seeds, there's a big difference. But then when you're saving your own, and you know, I'm 5 or 6 generations of tomatoes in on some of the seeds that I've saved now. So, you know, I've been growing them for years without having to pay other than just the medium to put them in, and the rest of the cost. It saves a significant amount of money.
When you buy a tomato from the grocery store, can you save those seeds?
Absolutely. I actually have a variety of tomato that I loved that I bought at the store, and I came home and saved the seeds, and I've been growing them ever since. So yes is the short answer. There's lots of that stuff that they'd like to say you can't, but you absolutely
Well, I
can.
would think almost that because they were genetically modified, they may have went the way of the banana and kind of neutralized those seeds and rendered them sterile.
And
in
that
the process.
is a thing for some vegetables, especially like there are patents on certain varieties of those things, so they make them so that you cannot propagate from the seed because it's the actual you know, genetics of it are patented.
So we'll be back after this short break to show everyone how to use green tomatoes to make a beautiful pie. Welcome back to Easy Eats. Again, we're in the Greener Villages Learning Kitchen with Erin Danforth, our growing program coordinator, and we are going to make a green tomato pie.
I am excited. I have not heard of this, and I'm really looking forward to it.
So, green tomato pie is flavored and seasoned just like an apple pie, but we're using green tomatoes.
Oh, that's so interesting. So it's like sweet
It's
seasoning.
sweet, yeah. If I wouldn't have told you and I put it in front of you, other than the seeds that you would have seen when you took it in a bite, you probably kind of wouldn't have noticed it.
That's amazing.
It's a recipe that, I mean, for me it's generational. My grandmother used to make it, and then my mom started making it. So this time of year, what do you do with all those green tomatoes that just won't ripen on the sill?
That's right.
So other than making chow or salsa verde or things like that,
which
that
we've done all of this season.
Absolutely, which everyone enjoys. But I mean, some people have a sweet tooth, and what else can you do? There's always things that you can do.
Be creative.
Exactly. So we're gonna make a pie, but before we start making the green tomato pie, we need to make a pie crust.
Sure.
So I'm gonna show you how to make. Really simple, really easy. It's an all butter crust. So first thing we're going to do, we're going to take a half a cup of butter. We're just going to put that right into the machine.
And that's chilled butter?
It's chilled. As cold as possible. And that's the secret to making a flaky pie crust. Is you don't want this butter to melt when you're making the crust because once it's cooked in the oven, it'll start to bubble and steam, and that's what creates the layer and the flakiness of the pie crust. To that, I'm going to add 2 1/4 cups of flour.
That's just
like
all-purpose flour?
All-purpose flour, yeah.
Okay.
You can use pastry flour if you want to get lighter, but all-purpose flour, everyone's got it. So
Right.
there we go. And then we're going to put in a teaspoon of salt, just like that. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this on and just pulse it for about 30 seconds or so, just to get it incorporated. So it's the same thing as just kind of chunking it into small pea-sized pieces is what we're looking for. So we'll turn that off. We'll take a peek.
It seems much easier than working it by hand.
Well, exactly. And let's just give that another 10 seconds here. And there we go. And then all I'm going to do is add water to bind it. And again, as cold as possible.
Okay.
I put this in the freezer before we started filming, so there's still some ice on it and everything, and that's what we want. We want it to be super, super cold because we want no friction from the machine, and again, we want to keep that butter
Okay. Keep that butter from melting.
in a solid form, essentially. So we'll just add this, and then we will just turn this on until the dough starts forming into a ball, and as soon as it turns into a ball, I just shut it down.
That is fascinating. I'm always up for the smartest, easiest way to do something, so I know new use for my food processor now.
Well, yeah, and these food processors are great.
They are. I love mine.
There we go, and then we're going to taste and check. Oh, there we go. No, that's perfect. I can give that a couple more minutes. Not a couple more minutes, sorry.
Oh.
Everything a kitchen minute can be anywhere from 30 seconds
Yeah, that's
to
right.
5 minutes.
This will take some time.
There we go. Now it's starting. You see how it's starting to come together?
Cool.
And then as soon as it starts to make a little bit of a noise like this, just like that, and it's not quite, I'm just going to turn it off like that.
Sure.
And then, so all I'm going to do now is just with my hands really quickly, turn it into a ball, just like this. And then we are going to cover it, and we're going to toss it into the fridge.
Okay, so you put it back in to keep it cold.
Exactly. All right, we're just going to set this in the fridge for a bit while we make our filling. So you need about 3 cups of green tomatoes, and all we're going to do is we're just going to slice them super thin. So cut them in half, like you would an apple pie. I like them thin because, again, I want it to almost be seamless. I don't want people to know it's tomato until they take those first bites, and then they're like, no way, it can't be. We want to get about 3 to 4 cups, give or take. That's about 5 tomatoes or so.
5 medium-sized tomatoes.
5 medium-sized tomatoes, give or take, yeah. For the filling, it's really simple. There's different methods, but this one's as close to the family recipe as possible. We're going to start off with 1.5 cups of brown sugar. You can use white sugar. I just like brown sugar because it adds that caramel to it.
Yes.
And then if you don't have vanilla, then you don't have to worry about adding vanilla. And
that
again,
makes
with
sense.
tomatoes, I don't want to add the vanilla. So I'm just kind of
Don't want to push the sweet
don't want to push the sweet too far.
That's
Exactly.
right.
And then to that, we're going to add 3 tablespoons of flour. And then 3 tablespoons of cornstarch.
Cornstarch, okay.
So you can go all flour
Yep.
or all cornstarch. So if you're looking for a gluten-free option, you make your crust gluten-free, and then to thicken, you can use your cornstarch. I do a mixture of both because I like the quickness that the thickness comes together with the cornstarch.
Yes.
But I do like the smooth texture, almost like a pudding-like texture when you use flour. It's a different type of thickness. So it works nice that way. And then we're going to season it like we season an apple pie. So I'm going to put in a little bit of cinnamon, and we're going to put a little bit of nutmeg, about a teaspoon each. And then in an apple pie, you would put lemon juice. Well, we're putting apple cider vinegar.
Oh. So you put apple cider vinegar in there. Now tell me a little bit about like why that's a good choice.
So when you're making a fruit pie or anything like that, you're always adding acid to it. And what acid does is it brightens up the flavors and it keeps color. So what we're doing is instead of we could put lemon juice or lime juice into this, but seeing fitting is in it being a little bit savory. And you know what? When I make my apple pies, I put a little bit of apple cider vinegar. That same reason, it creates brightness and sharpness.
And it doesn't take much, does it? Just a little bit makes a big difference.
It does, absolutely. So now we've got this all broken up. We're just going to add our tomatoes in just like this. And then all we're going to do is we are going to Mix them up. And we are just going to let them sit for a few minutes, just to let the juices from the tomatoes
Sure.
dissolve all the sugars and
Sure.
and let all the flour and cornstarch combine.
It's so interesting how this was a longtime family recipe of yours, but yet something that a lot of people haven't even heard of before.
There we go. So we're just going to let that sit a little bit
Sure.
right here. We're just going to let this sit for a few minutes and let all the flavors absorb, and we'll be right back after this short break to make that pie. Welcome back to Easy Eats. Again, we're in the Greener Villages Learning Kitchen with Erin Danforth, and we are going to be making the pie now.
This is exciting.
So that's set, and you want to leave it sit for at least 15 minutes or so,
Okay.
just to let flavors absorb.
Sure.
You can also, if you wanted to, you could cook it and have it thickened up already.
Okay, I was going to
and
ask
then
about
let it
that.
cool down, put it into the pie.
Okay.
But we're doing it like this today, and then we'll talk about, if we're going to do it like that, what you do is you start your oven up really, really hot. So you
Okay.
start your oven up at about 425. You put your pie in for about 25 minutes.
Okay.
And then you turn it down to about 350 and let it go for another 40.
Okay.
So we're going to roll out our pie dough. So when you're rolling out pie dough, you try to do it as quickly as possible and start out with a round circle. That way you get a round pie.
Right. That makes sense.
It does. And try to work from the middle and then move the dough around. And always sprinkle with a little bit of flour. And what I always do, just to make sure that I'm doing it right, is I'll just grab my pie plate, I'll put it over and go, okay,
Check the size.
perfect.
Of it.
And then I want to make sure that there's a good inch or so gap
Okay.
around it. That way I know when it falls into the pie shell that
Sure.
there's a little bit that'll stick over. Just like that. And then to get your pie dough on, I always just roll it onto my pin like this. Then I'll bring my pie shell here.
Yep.
And then I've greased this in advance.
Okay.
Even though there's a lot of butter in here,
Yep.
I hate risking it, and I
Yes.
don't like scrubbing my pans, so I put a little bit of
What do you usually grease your pans with?
with butter.
With butter.
There we go, just like this, and then we're just going to lightly,
So about how thick do you roll that out to?
about a quarter inch or so, yeah.
Okay.
Now you can make it as thick as you want, depending on the type of crust you want, but I think the thinner the better, because then it'll crisp up. And then all I do is I cut the edges off, I grab a knife, and then I just kind of slide around, just like this, and then I save my ends. So my other grandmother, my mamea, my French-Canadian side, what we used to do is we take these pie doughs,
Yeah.
the excess like this, because you can't roll it up or anything again.
Right.
What we would do is we would cover it in butter, we'd put brown sugar, a little bit of cinnamon, we'd roll them up, and then we would
Ooh.
either fry them or put them in beside the pie. So we've got our pie shell just like this, and then all I'm going to do is we're just going to scoop in our filling.
Now, do you try to strain some of
I
that
do
liquid
try to
out?
strain some of that liquid out, but it will thicken. So if you want that nice kind of syrup, then definitely.
Right.
There we go. We just top that up.
They do really almost look like apples, like you
They
said.
do, right? And there we are. Just tap that down, right like that. And then all we're going to do is we're going to take our second round, and then we're going to put a crust on top. Now you could, if you wanted to, put a streusel top, as they call it, so an
Okay.
oatmeal like crumble,
Like a crumble?
top.
Okay, that's I was going to
I've
ask
never
if
really
there's any other
tried
way.
it,
Okay.
but I mean, there's always a first time. And it's great for those of you who don't like making pie
Right.
crusts. So you could, and you know what, I've never tried it, and you know what, it just made me think that you could almost make this into a green tomato crisp if you did it that way.
That's right. That's kind of more what it would be then. That's super interesting. I wonder how the like oats and stuff would complement that. I'm sure it's good if people have been doing it.
Well, absolutely, yeah.
That's so neat.
Here
I
we
love
go.
hearing about the ways that you use the extra pieces of the crust too. That's so smart. I love finding ways to make sure that we waste as little as possible.
So just roll that up, and then pop this one right on top, just like this. And then I'm just going to press both of them down, just like this.
Kind of into each other and
Into each other, exactly.
Yeah. You made that pie crust look easy. I struggle so hard.
So there we go.
Look at that.
We've got our excess right here, which I'll save, and we will turn into something else. And then all you want to do is you want to make some vent holes. So you always want to make sure. So you can either put a big circle, or what I like to do is I just put 3 big slits, just like this. And then I grab a baking sheet, and I put the baking sheet underneath. It's
Catch
always
the
a good
drippings?
Absolutely, that's exactly what it is you don't want to clean up those drippings
Yes,
underneath your
no.
oven. It's easier to take them right off the pan.
Absolutely.
Perfect. So this is going to go in at 425 for about 20 minutes.
Okay.
And then after 20 minutes, we'll drop the heat to 350.
Okay.
And now, I've got one that we made a little bit ahead of time here. So we'll take this one out so everyone can see. There we go. We got this one right here,
That's beautiful.
which is lovely and out of the oven.
Love it. It smells so good. It smells
It
like
does,
an apple
doesn't it?
pie.
Absolutely. So, I'd love to be able to cut right into it right away, but it's far too hot because it just came out of the oven. So you kind of need to let it rest for probably about 20 minutes or so, just to let all those juices kind of refirm up.
Thicken, yes.
And, well, they're already thick. They're just, when it's super hot,
Right.
it's still a little bit loose. So you just kind of want to let those thicken up a little bit. But then essentially, that's the pie
beautiful.
right there. So we're gonna let that cool a little bit. How do you put
Yes.
your garden to bed?
So what I usually do at the end of every season is I swear by a good compost. So
Okay.
first and foremost, that is the foundation of what we work into the beds at the beginning of the season and also at the end. So what we do here is every bed gets a top-up of compost. We use an animal compost. It's really nice and light and loamy, so it adds a lot of texture to the soil to keep it from compacting and stuff like that. And then letting it sit over the winter, it gives a chance for all of those nutrients to kind of work their way into the soil and recharge it and be ready for the next season. The other thing that we do is we add some organic soil improvements every fall because they take a bit longer to activate. So we use things like green sand. It comes from marine beds that they've dug up. It's got all kinds of just rich, wonderful elements and things in it, and calcium phosphate, that kind of stuff. So we use a lot of those things that just help improve the quality of the soil.
Absolutely, no, that's fantastic. So thank you so much for joining me
Thank
today, telling us a
you.
little bit about the gardens, about the progress and the initiatives that
Yes.
we're taking. I mean, the Greener Village has so many things. We're not just a food bank, I think is what the tagline used to be.
Yes.
And it's changed so many times, but we're more than just a food bank.
So much more than just a food bank. Like I said, I thought I knew what this place was all about until I really got involved, and then there's just so much more that happens behind the scenes. From, like, I didn't know that you supported the community kitchen and the school lunch program and all that stuff as well, right? Like, to see how all the different organizations work together too to support each other is just such a beautiful thing.
We all have the same goal.
Yes.
So we work together to
Yes.
attain that same dream of finding or working our way out of a job, is the way I put it. Yeah.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, no. Thank
So
you so
before
much.
we go,
Oh, we get to try it.
absolutely. I mean, I can't slice
Yay.
into it, but I mean,
Oh, that's
honestly,
all right.
just pick into it like this.
I
And,
would like to say I've never just dug straight into a pie, but that's
You've
not
never?
true.
No.
Yeah. This looks
It
delicious.
smells nice too. It's hot.
Amazing.
It's great, eh?
You would never know. Well, I've added something else to my list to try now.
Right on.
Thank you, Chef. That's
Thank
delicious.
you so much.